This video is a deep dive into understanding archival finding aids. To begin, in order to understand how to search and use archives collections, it's important to understand a bit about what archival collections are, where they come from, and how they are stored in the archive. A useful way to understand archives collections generally is to think of archival material as rare, unique, and original documents that are now useful as historical evidence. An archival collection is usually acquired from a single original creator. That could mean the personal papers of an individual person, like a writer, artist, or politician, or the records of an organization, like a business, government office, or student group. In order to maintain historical context, new material that's acquired by the archive is kept together in a collection, according to the person or the organization from which it was acquired. Within each individual collection, there could be a wide variety of different types of material: letters and correspondence, writing drafts and publications, personal diaries, financial or business records, maps, architectural drawings, artwork, posters, photos, photo albums and scrapbooks, slides, photo negatives, even film, video, sound recordings and music, and digital files. For example, this image shows just a small sample of material we received from the avant-garde filmmaker and film professor Stan Brakhage. All of this material, including paper records, photographs, catalogs, and media, was donated to the archive directly from Stan Brakhage, and it's now stored together in the Stan Brakhage collection. The size of each collection can also vary, depending on how much material we received from the creator. Some collections may contain only a few individual items, like this deed signed by Abe and Mary Todd Lincoln, while others, like the records of the National Farmers Union, can fill many hundreds of records boxes. Importantly, because we receive original, unpublished records and papers directly from the creators, material we receive is not always well organized or stored in a way that's good for physical preservation. Imagine that a researcher wants to write a biography about you. If you boxed up everything in your desk, your home office, or your work area, how easily could someone navigate through your material? When a new collection arrives at CU Boulder libraries, archivists work to prepare material for researcher use. This is called archival processing. It involves three things. First, we rehouse material into new boxes and folders wherever necessary to better preserve the physical condition of the material in the long term. Second, we arrange the material into sections, what we call series, to help researchers understand and identify what types of materials are contained in the collection. To preserve historical context, our standard is to retain archival records in the original order they were kept by their creator. This means that the series we choose reflects the original context of the collection as best as possible. And third, we describe the material in a written document that explains to researchers what material is in the collection and where to find what they were looking for. Remember, unlike published books or periodicals that come with tables of contents and footnotes and indexes, archival collections are original materials that come directly from the creator or the user. It's often the work of the archivist to create a sort of roadmap to help a researcher navigate through the boxes and boxes of individual letters, documents, photographs, and other diverse types of materials. The document created to describe an archival collection is called a finding aid. Each individual collection in an archive should have a corresponding finding aid to help you navigate what's included in the collection and where in the collection to find it. A finding aid may be an unfamiliar document at first, but most finding aids follow a regular shared structure. Once you learn to recognize parts of the finding aid, you should be able to navigate the records of most archival institutions. There are two main parts of the finding aid. The first part is called front matter, which contains general, summarized information about the entire collection. It's called front matter because finding aids in the pre-digital era were printed out into booklets, and the general information about the collection would be at the front of the book. The second part of the finding aid is an inventory of the material contained in the collection. It indicates what's contained in individual boxes or folders. The inventory often makes up the bulk of the finding aid, depending on the size of the collection and the detail of the description. I'll talk about each part of the finding aid in turn. As I said, front matter is the first place to look for general information about the entire collection. The front matter of every finding aid should contain some or all of the following information. The title. Sometimes the title of the collection will describe the content, like the Latinos in Colorado Oral History Project. But usually the title of the collection refers to the person or the organization from which the collection originated. As a result, it may not be clear what the content of a collection will be if you don't recognize the name of the creator. For example, the Rocky Mountain Llama and Alpaca Association, that's probably going to be llama and alpaca material. But the Walter Orr Roberts collection, if you didn't know Walter Orr Roberts was an astrogeophysicist, then you wouldn't expect that material in this collection is related mostly to astronomy and climate science. The abstract. The abstract is the place to look for the briefest explanation of the collection. Who or what does the title refer to? What formats are included? What subjects are represented? The inclusive dates will tell you the time period from which the collection originated. Was this material from the 1890s or the 1990s? Those collections would certainly contain different types of information. The creator. If the title of the collection does not refer to the original creator, you may find the creator listed elsewhere in the front matter. In this example, the creator of the Latinos in Colorado Oral History Project was Professor Maria Montoya, who led the project as a course assignment in 1993. The quantity or extent is an important field to consult. This will tell you the size or the volume of the collection. It may be listed according to the number of boxes or number of items, but it's usually listed according to linear feet or cubic feet. Linear feet is the standard measure of archival material because it helps the archivist know how much shelf space is needed for this collection. For the researcher, think of 1 linear foot as 1 standard size records box, or 2 smaller document boxes. The extent could also help you plan your research time. How much material can you reasonably see in one trip to the archive? Should you plan a research trip to an out-of-state archive for a collection that only contains a few boxes? Sometimes, the extent can also indicate the number and types of containers in the collection, which could help you determine what to expect, like oversized material or media items. But remember that this usually describes the boxes and containers in the collection, not the number or format of items within those containers. After this basic information, like title, abstract, and extent, the front matter includes more detailed notes about the content and the context of the collection. The biography or history note will provide some information about the person or organization who created this collection. This is particularly helpful when the person or organization is unfamiliar or is not otherwise identified in things like Wikipedia articles, biographies, or other reference sources. The scope and content note is a longer description of what's included or represented in the collection. This could include a more detailed outline of the series of the collection, an explanation of the physical formats or media contained in the collection, or a description of the subjects, people, places, or organizations represented in the content of the collection material. An arrangement note is not always included, but if it is, it'll give you a brief outline of the material in the collection and how it's organized. The processing note gives an explanation of the archival processing work done on this collection by the archivist. Because the act of arranging and describing a collection is an intervention by the archivist, we try to be transparent about the work that we've done. The processing note could give you important context about the collection, like explaining where and why something was removed or retitled. The processing note isn't always included as a separate note. Sometimes, this type of information is included in the arrangement note or in the scope and content note. A note on related material may offer suggestions of other collections or resources related to the topic of this collection. There could also be notes on the existence and location of originals if this collection contains copies of material that's held elsewhere, or the existence and location of copies in the opposite case. And there may be administrative or restriction information. This information is also important, because you may see something listed as being part of the collection, but it's actually not available to researchers until a certain date in the future. Or you may need additional permission from the creator of the collection to access it. Reproduction or technical access notes could explain the institution's policies on how to make or request copies of material from the collection. Those are most of the fields you may find in the front matter of a finding aid, but other repositories may include additional information. For example, a note on custodial history or source of acquisition may tell you more about the origin of this collection and who donated it, especially for collections that have passed from one archive to another at some point. A finding aid may also include a note on accruals that indicates when different parts of the collection were received by the archive in separate donations over time. Altogether, if you have remaining general questions about a collection after reading through the front matter, reach out to the archive or the repository and ask them directly. After the front matter, the bulk of the finding aid, usually, is an inventory of the material in the collection. There's an important caveat here. We, the archivists of the world, will never have enough time to describe everything we have in complete detail. The level of detail included in the finding aid inventory may vary widely by collection, based on many factors, but usually related to how much time we've had to properly process and describe it. You may find a collection that has a list of every folder in every box, even every item in every folder, or you may find a collection that has no list yet at all. In that case, you'll have to use the general description of the collection from the front matter to determine what could be useful to your research, or you could contact the institution to find out more. Sometimes, digging into an unprocessed collection is like a wonderful, mysterious treasure hunt. When there is an inventory, there are a few ways that it could be formatted. Some finding aids will list each box in the collection in order with a list of the folder titles or item titles within that box. More contemporary and more thorough finding aids will be divided into series. Remember that series usually reflect the original order of the collection as it was stored by the creator, so the series could be chosen by material type, like correspondence, business, writing drafts, media, or according to things like time period, organization division, or subject. In this example, the series are writing files, subject files, virtual museum materials, and so on. Importantly, each series in a collection may be described with its own sort of front matter to generally describe the content, history, origin, and arrangement of that individual series. So be sure to check the series for additional summary information. Within each series, there may be a list of folder or item titles, or there may be subseries to further divide the material in the collection into subsections. The extent to which individual folders and items in a collection are described will also vary by collection. In heavily processed collections, the finding aid may be able to tell you details like media specifications, photograph sizes and formats, or even number of pages per document. Finding aids for relatively unprocessed collections may simply say, Series 7 contains 21 boxes related to health and safety. Last, keep in mind that the organization of the finding aid reflects the content of the collection and not necessarily the physical order of the material. For example, to find Walter Orr Roberts' correspondence with NASA, you'll want to see Box 83 and Box 97. These two folders are listed together on the finding aid, so they're easy to search for, but physically they're stored further apart. While navigating through the finding aid, make a list of the things that you'd like to request to see in the archives. Try to include as much information as possible about what you'd like to see: the collection name, collection number if one is indicated, series number or series name, box number, folder number, and item number, however much information is available depending on the collection. When you arrive in the archive to do research, the archivist will bring you the boxes that you request, and you can search for the folders or items that you'd like to see inside. Or, when making requests remotely, the archivist will search for the boxes and folders you identify, and they may be able to send you pictures or copies of the documents you request. All archivists recognize that finding aids are unfamiliar documents, and they're often difficult to navigate and to understand. Whenever you have trouble knowing what to request or how to search, contact the archive or repository for assistance or for more information. They'll also be able to explain their policies for how you can access the material that you identify. This video was a deep dive into recognizing and understanding the parts of an archival finding aid. Finding aids for archival collections at the University of Colorado Boulder Libraries are available at archives.colorado.edu. And contact CU Boulder Libraries with any additional questions you have.